got methadone and sleeping tablets, and I did a home detox in my mum and dad's bedroom, their box bedroom. And I thought, right, and I was about 2 or 3 weeks clean and sober, and it was great, you know. Really, really, really hard, you know. There's no stopping it this time. Because I had a bit of guilt and shame around my dad's death as well, because I was at the fighting with Eilish, and he rang me that morning to see where I was. Going, I'd love to be like that. So I start going into mass. After I drop the kids to school, I'd go into mass, and I'd sit there and I'd listen to the mass and all that. Still wasn't getting a lot out of it, but there was something starting to resonate inside me, you know. Tuesday, Eilish went to work, and I got up and I got sick in the toilet. And I remember after that, I was like shaking in the bed. And my daughter, Florentina, she was 11, she came in to me and she said, Daddy,
if you want to help us spread the word of the Lord, make sure you subscribe, tap that notification button, and
like, comment, and spread the good news.
God bless.
Right.
All right, so welcome back to Reclaim the Faith podcast. This is sponsored by Magic Door Studio, the best podcast studio in Ireland. We love working here. It's so easy for us. We just come, sit down, everything gets recorded and done for us, and we walk away and just start posting. There's no better place to work, and we love it here. And just before we get started, I want to remind everybody that the 23rd of November is the worldwide Eucharistic procession, and it's going down in Derry for Ireland. So everybody come out, glorify Christ together in the streets of Derry. It's going to be making history. God bless you all.
You made me want to yip.
Yup. So a simple man, Darragh Kelehan. What's funny is that the last week when we started panicking, because the guest didn't show up very last minute, I looked at my emails from the night before, and your name was on this hit list from somebody. From Damien Richardson actually emailed me, and Luke McCann got him in touch with me, and he suggested you. But then he also had an Instagram that was suggesting you, and we thought that it was so last minute. We thought maybe he could get on, you know, last minute last week. But obviously we made it happen there, and fair play to you, make it happen. And then just a few little God incidences there with that as well. Last night I was watching a podcast about Christian martyrs, and you come with this Our Martyrs book, because I said I'm going to buy one today. I said I'm going to go on Amazon and buy one today, and in the car while you were behind us, me and her were talking about Christian persecution. And then you tell us that all the 50% of the proceeds or percentage
100% of all the proceeds are going to persecuted Christians in Africa and all around the world. 100% of all the proceeds.
Our Martyrs, written by Father Dennis Murphy, a record of Catholics killed for their faith in Ireland under the penal laws from 1535 to 1691. So 100% of the proceeds are going to Christians who are persecuted across the whole world. Guys, you have to get one of these books. It's simple as that, like, you know. And
just to say as well, they're a tenner for the book, and you can also purchase the online version as well for a tenner. And like that, 100% of the proceeds are for the persecuted Christians.
It's a tenner well spent, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then a few days ago, I came across a Father Leon, who's in Medjugorje, Father Leon video where he was talking about the family curses. And I said, I need to do a family curse thing. Because my family's definitely cursed.
We're all cursed.
Like a lot of us. We were talking about this. And then inside is a little prayer for freedom of curses. So there you go. All the little God incidences. I love it.
It was supposed to happen, all right, John?
Absolutely.
It was supposed to happen.
That's great. And thanks for that. That's
no problem.
We love
thanks, Damien, as well.
Thank you, Damien.
Thank you, Damien, very much. Really, really appreciate it. People go and buy the book, Our Martyrs. Where can they get that, do you know?
Damien sells them. I think you can get them in the bookshops. I must find out. I have a link. I'll send you on a link as well.
Do, because we'll put the link in the YouTube description. It will be in the YouTube description. Anybody wants to buy it, go buy it.
Yeah.
Because that's a great cause.
It really is. Like, I mean, you know, to see what these people really died for. They died for us so we can have our faith freely. And some of the horrific tortures that these guys went through. You know, I haven't read it all. I've read bits and pieces of it, some of it. And some of the horrific things, and all they had to do was renounce Jesus and swear an allegiance to the King of England. Like, they were hung, drawn, quartered, they were starved for days, they were left in cells in the cold, they were urinated on. You know, the British did so many horrible things to them, and all they had to do was renounce their faith, and they didn't, you know. And I was mad because I remember talking to a guy in Medjugorje, a priest in Medjugorje, and he was talking about martyrs over there, and I was only after getting, Damien was after giving me this book, you know. And I was telling him a little bit, and I says, Father, I says, if it came to today now, it says, and you were taken aside, and I said, and someone was going to persecute you, I says, and all you had to do was renounce Jesus, how long do you think you'd last? And he looked at me, and fair play to him, he honestly answered me, and he says, I don't know. And I says,
That's the thing. We can all assume that, I wouldn't, but you actually have to pray for that. You're told to pray for it, because in that moment, you just don't know what's going to happen, and people think, because I love God, but in that moment you do not know, and it is a special thing that people, it's a special grace, so we should all be praying for it now, because we never know the day something may knock on our own doors. Just being honest,
and you do get a special grace. I mean, Damien did tell me afterwards, he said you do get a special grace that when you are going through that, the Lord gives you the strength. So he said these people would have had God very, very close to them. We would have had them very close to them. So it was amazing. It's
great that a book on the Irish martyrs as well. But now today, there's more martyrs than probably any time in history all around the world. With Christians are being persecuted in Syria, in the Congo the other day. 61 Catholics were murdered and butchered in a church during Mass.
Syria was being set alight.
Syria set alight.
Christian communities were being put on fire, killing them all. This is happening, and it's not making the news. No one's hearing about this unless you dig deep, or unless you're in a Christian community who are sharing it amongst ourselves. And
in Nigeria is a genuine genocide in that country alone. They're estimating there's going to be no Nigerian Christians by 2060. If it keeps going at the numbers. There's 100,000 being slaughtered since 2009 by Boko Haram, are the main evil Islamist extremist organisation who are going around just cutting heads off. I've seen like a video. It's just horrible. It's just horrible. And then it's going on Afghanistan. It's happening everywhere. And it's just silenced by the media. It's really hard. Like the religion that has brought about the enlightenment of people, the religion that has built democracy, that gave us all our laws and all our inalienable rights that we base our systems on, and the religion that has brought about the most amount of peace in the world, and a religion that was used to end slavery, by the way. That's the religion that is the most persecuted. And no one talks about it. It's really enraging. It's it's really, and people. And I think, there's a lot of different stuff going on around the world, and we should talk about it all. But just let's be fair about it,
It's sad times, John. It's definitely sad times, Danielle, what we're living in. As he says, all Jesus ever preached was love, peace and love. It was all he ever preached. You can take all the other religions and what they preached. None of them taught like what Jesus taught.
Absolutely not.
And yet, as you said, we're the most persecuted out of them all.
Well, even that idea, the cross. Dying on the cross, which was, it was a peasant death. That was a peasant death and a slave death, actually. And Jesus willingly died in the most shameful death, where they sped on him and put the crown of thorns over him and tortured him and whipped him in the most vicious way and crucified him. And he did that for us. And we all have to carry the cross, don't we? That's the thing. But it's look, we could talk about that, the Christian persecution, and we will
get a podcast on that completely.
We want to get some. We'd love to get someone
it's
as well.
close to our hearts. So
while we're here, I'd love to just say that to anybody out there that knows someone who's an expert in Christian persecution, and I'd love to talk about, if we could talk to someone from Nigeria, or because what's happening in Nigeria, because
who've been there and seen it for themselves, because a lot of people keep going, until they see it for themselves, they don't believe or whatever. But if someone has been there, please come on, enlighten everybody as to what's happening, because loads of people are still completely ignorant to this, and it is happening on a daily basis. So all our prayers are for them.
This platform is yours, so please just get in touch in any way at all, and we'll get back to you. Now, Darragh, after that heavy opening...
Yes, Darragh, welcome.
Welcome to the Reclaim the Faith podcast by Magic Door Studio.
He's been down to do that.
Thank you.
It's my 1980s style trailer narration voice,
He's looking at him plugging to get a job.
I might need a job soon, love. I'm getting married next year.
Well, bring all the jobs. Bring all the jobs. I need one.
So how are you, Darragh?
Today, I'm good. By the grace of God, John. Thank God. Today, I am actually very good. I love my life today. I love my life today, thank God.
Tell us a bit about yourself, Darragh, where you're from and where you grew up and what your life was like.
So the accent probably gives it away. I'm from Dublin, yeah, and the north side of Dublin, Blanchardstown.
First proper dub on the podcast, by the way.
He's been waiting on this.
We had JP, but JP's from the west originally, lived in East Wall. Now he's up in Derry. He's worse than a traveller. You're the first proper dub on the podcast, so deadly to have you, brother.
Lovely, always a first, huh? Nice to break that barrier. I suppose I grew up in Cardiff and Blanchardstown, in the north side of Dublin. Grew up to a Christian family, a Catholic family. My mum and dad Catholic. I was baptised, and 2 older brothers and a younger sister. Made me Holy Communion, would have made me confirmation, and I would have went to Bible study in between there somewhere along the line. But I suppose after my confirmation was kind of where my little journey with God I closed that door on God. The material things in life kind of took over then, you know. My family was always around the area. My mum and dad put us into loads of things. Like I did karate. I was in karate when I was 6 years of age in Shotokan. It was a club in the school beside us, you know. My 2 older brothers were into it, and I went into it, you know, gracefully went into it, you know, and I loved it. And it was one of them things. Anything I ever did in life, I seemed to be a pattern throughout my whole life. I really got stuck into it and did it 100%, you know.
Reminds me of someone.
So karate, I was 6 years of age, going through the motions and that, and all the competitions in karters. I was all Ireland champion at karter, which is like a nice way to describe it. The style, it's a dance kind of, with all your moves in the one little yoke, you know. And I fighting as well. I was 8 years of age, and I was a 3rd brown belt, which was like next step black, you know. And the karate club closed down. And he moved to Finglas. And of course, me, 8 years of age, back in the 80s, is like, I ain't going to Finglas. So football came up, so I started playing football. Yeah, and that was it, you know. And like that, I got into me football, I got big into me football, and I love me football. And that's when, you know, I said after me confirmation then, you know, out with the lads, getting up to be devilment and all sorts of stuff like that, you know, chasing girls, going to discos, drinking alcohol, and the usual, you know. And that's where, you know, my life kind of started to veer off a little bit. But you know, the rave scene came in, and I was young, and I was going into dance scenes in Dublin and all and that, and mixing with certain people and doing all the little party drugs that you do. But in the midst of all that, I met a beautiful girl. I was 15 and she was 13 first. And then she dumped me because she still lived in Finglas at the time, and she didn't want to travel. But then they moved to Castleknock, and we started going out with each other again when I was 16 and she was 14. And that was the start of a really special relationship. She's my wife today, Irish. But and the 2 of us, we fell in love, and we went on this lovely little journey. And we sampled all the drugs together, going into dances and discos and stuff like that. I finished my leaving cert in school. I was the first one in the family to do it. I was too young to leave and get a job because I started school early. So I had to finish my leaving cert because I was too young, you know. So I did that, but I always wanted to be a carpenter. Always, from the time I was so small, you know. I'll never forget one Christmas, I got Star Wars for Christmas. And my brother got a little wooden box, a little carpentry set, my oldest brother John, and a little carpentry box, you know. And I remember I wanted that, you know. So of course I says, I'll play this up. I said, John, do you want to swap Star Wars for the little carpentry set? And he looked, he says, now if you swap, it's for keeps. And I says, yeah, no problem. I knew, John would have been 6 or 7 years older than me, so I knew after about an hour he was out with the lads, and I would have had the both of them, you know. And that happened, you know. John headed off out, and he first said to me, Ma, he says, Ma, he wants to swap this and it's for keeps. And my ma says, no, that's it, you're not getting it back, no problem. An hour or so later, John's mate's knocking off, he's gone. So I'm playing with my carpentry set and the Star Wars figures, you know.
Win-win.
But that was it. I was always out building tree houses, making go-karts with all the lads, you know, any old wheels of trolleys and bits of timber, and we'd be nailing and screwing and all. But the lads would knock for me, and I'd be like a little surgeon with my little wooden box down the road, you know, 8 or 9 years of age, trying to knock something together for us, you know. So I always wanted to be a carpenter. And I did. When I finished my leaving cert, I went on and got an apprenticeship. And I was very blessed to get the apprenticeship because I was with a lad from Bettystown, and I was in Foss doing a pre-apprenticeship course for a while. There was no apprenticeships coming up. It was 96 at the time, and you had to really know someone to get in there. So I was in Foss working my ass off, and next of all, this fella comes up to me and he says, I can get you painting and decorating tomorrow. I said, nope. He said, what about bricklaying? I said, no. I said, I want carpentry. So we went off, but he came back to me with this guy from Bettystown, and I got a little start with him, and he held on to me and kept me there, and I made a great friendship with him, and he's still very, very good friends with me today, Richard. But he learnt me so much, and I learned so much, and I loved it, and that was my carpentry skills. I always wanted to be, but I worked hard during the week, the party hard at the weekend. That was the motto, and that was where I kind of grew up with that as well around my area. Because Cardiff would have been rough. It would have been a very rough place to grow up back then in the 80s. There was nothing in it, literally nothing in it. So all people had to do to amuse themselves was either drugs or get up to bedevilment, And I said there was no fun in God back then. You didn't really, I'm not going down to that church, That's not fun, So, I suppose I went on through the years doing that. Moved out of the house and got a little apartment, me and the wife, our fiancé. We got engaged first, and we moved into a little apartment down in Blanchardstown Village, and everything was rosy. I thought I had it licked, came out of my apprenticeship, and life was made. But then I was in a car crash. I was in a bad car crash. I broke my wrist, broke my nose, cheekbones, and smashed all my back teeth. I had no seatbelt when I hit a tree. Well, the tree ran out in front of me, really, I didn't really hit it. I had a couple of drinks on me, and I was probably had to been smoking a few joints as well, But then I was out working, been self-employed, because when I finished my apprenticeship with Richard, I always thought I had to leave the nest, It was like fly the nest, learned how to stand on your own 2 feet and then come back. So that's what I did. So back then you were kind of self-employed, you were like a sole trader, and when you're a sole trader and you're not working, you don't get paid off the government social welfares or anything like that. So the little bit of savings I had was kind of dwindling very quickly with the rent and the bills and stuff like that, and my wrist was broken. The only other way I thought I knew how to make money was to sell drugs. So I got into that, I got into selling a few drugs.
And were you kind of selling a little bit on the side just for your own party, and that kind of way already? Or
I had done
the way
that.
someone would just get announced and they'd go.
I had done that, John. I remember going to parties. I remember going into raves and all that, and I'd go out and I'd get 20 or 30 years, and that would be enough then. I'd get mine free. I'd sell them and I'd get mine free. So I was accustomed to, doing a little bit here and a little bit there. I wasn't making much money off it. I was getting my own supply free, so I didn't have to pay for it. Because on an apprentice's wages back then, you weren't getting paid much money, and I had to, So I had little ways and schemes to make money, and that's what it was. I didn't think I was doing that bad. The lads wanted them. I was going to give them good stuff. They weren't going to get ripped off, and I was getting a debt paid, and I was getting my bills paid, and my drugs paid. But then when I was out of work this time, it was a little bit bigger. It was a little bit of a bigger step I took, and the quantities were a lot bigger, But the money was there, and I was with someone that was very close to me. He was a very good friend of mine at the time, and I was helping him out, and he was helping me out. We kind of saw it like that, And that went on for a year or so, and then we got caught. We got caught selling the drugs. My flat was raided, my apartment was raided. There was a lot of drugs in it over the New Year's Eve, 2000 to 2001. There was that's Section 15A. There was over 50, 100 grand's worth of drugs there. There was 40 grand's worth of cash to pay for the drugs. So we got into a lot of trouble, My brother was involved in paramilitaries, and that didn't go down too well when the special branch went up and told his hierarchy that I was selling drugs. Because I used to do the door for my brother in the Shanty nightclub. Right. Until the car crash. The Shanty, Ice Den. It got turned into Ice Den, I used to do the door with my brother back then, and then when I was in the car crash and broke the wrist, I couldn't. So, of course, then the provost just wanted, the branch wanted to be a little bit manipulative and told, that I was selling drugs for John in this nightclub. No such thing. My brother was anti-drugs completely, So, that didn't go down too well. My drug dealer wanted the money back, and I'm looking at Section 15A. So the stress of all of that kind of led me and Eilish to breaking up with each other. And that kind of hurt me more than anything, As I was lovesick, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep.
Nothing worse than a broken heart.
There's nothing worse, John, nothing worse. The other stuff I could kind of deal with, and I did, being a good manipulator, I kind of did. I dealt with all those things and played one off another and bounced through this and that and the other. But in the midst of all that, I had to go back working then. The wrist was a little bit better, and I remember that time that I'd done all the party drugs. I'd done all them, but I never done heroin or anything like that because I knew I'd seen what it done to me area. I'd seen what it done to people in the area, and I'd seen the deaths and the misery it caused. But I was down walking on my auntie's roof down in Kildare. I put a roof on her house, and I had a fella walking with me, and he was smoking heroin in the car. And I remember getting down. I'm smoking a joint on the top of this roof, looking down at him, going, "Graham, what are you doing?" And he says, "I can't walk unless I get this into me. I'm sick." And I walked away, and I was like, but in my head, I was going over all these things, Section 15, my brother, the trouble I'm after bringing on to myself, not with Eilish, all this stuff was going on in my head. And I remember just going back down to him and saying, "That numbs your brain, doesn't it? It stops you from thinking." And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Give us a..." And that was it. I started a roller coaster of a journey down with heroin. And that was it. I got back with Eilish.
Can I just stop you there for a minute there? When was this? What year roughly?
That was 2001.
Right.
It was around February, March 2001.
Right. Wow. We must have been in a bad place there because, like, I grew up in Darragh and Coolock. You know, I've aunts and uncles and cousins, heroin addicts, and I've seen it all my life growing up in the area, similar to Cordorf, Darndale, very similar areas. Yeah. And when I was growing up, there would have been some stigma on them, like they were the lowest of the low. Yeah. It's the way you would have looked at them, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, totally dehumanising them completely, like walking zombies, you know what I mean? And you'd be slagging them and everything, you know? And obviously it hit big in from like 79 and then the 80s it blew up. So you were very well aware of the stigma even attached. Yeah. So you must have been in a really bad place because, you know, that's someone who would have been considered the lowest of the low, someone who'd done heroin. Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. So that fear in your, like, you were just obviously tortured. I was
totally gone, John. You know, as I said, I had split up with Eilish, so I was heartbroken. I had these things. My brother wanted to bring me up the mountains and shoot me, I heard, you know. Me drug dealer wanted his money back, and I'm looking at 10-year mandatory in prison, you know. And of all this going on in your mind, and it's like just this, just non-stop. And I'd no God in my life at this stage. I'd only demons in my head, and they were just...
That is literally the devil was in your head.
Pouring fire onto the situation. So I had that. I was one of those that stigmatised drug addicts. I was like, look at that scumbag, you know. He has to go and take that every day. Now, even knowing that I was driving around Dublin to buy a bit of hash, you know, I drive from the far end of Cardiff to the far south side.
Or doing party drugs.
Party drugs.
The ignorance,
but not that. Not heroin, like, you know what I mean? So I was in a pretty bad place to actually go down and say, do you know what, give us some of that. But when I did it, I mean, look, I'm not going to lie, it was one of the nicest feelings I ever felt in my life. You know, it really did do exactly what I said on the tin. You know,
it works. Really that's the thing.
And I know at the start I remember thinking, I'll only do this now and again, it'll be all right. It gets a hold of you. You know, people say how many times you have to do heroin before you're strung out. The first time you do heroin, you're strung out. Really, mentally, not physically, but mentally, because you want that again. You know. And that was the thing, you know, I thought I was going to be different than all these drug addicts, that I wasn't going to let it get a hold of me. Hey, bigger fool me, bigger fool me. I got back with Eilish, but I couldn't bring that stigma back into the relationship. And this was like, I did the heroin and the crack and the harder drugs in Finglas. I didn't do them in Cardiff, so I used to leave me area, because that's how much of a stigma I had on it, John, you know, how much shame and guilt that I had about it.
So did she not know?
She didn't know. No, she didn't know. So I'm over in Finglas and I'm going to work, or on my way back from work, and I'm doing my business over there, and Eilish didn't know.
But did she know?
Not really at the start, because I'd come in and I'd say, it's a few joints, and she used to smoke her joints as well, you know, and she'd say, it's just a few joints and a few bits of this. And I suppose as time was going on, Danielle, she would have kind of figured it out. It wasn't really till we bought a house, because I was a very good functioning drug addict, you know. There was loads of work back then as well. I was self-employed, I was making good money.
Celtic Tiger.
Celtic Tiger, 2001, 2002. You know, we're getting paid great money, going out and doing jobs. And I could do a full day's work once I had a little bit in the morning, and then as soon as I finished work, I'd have to get me heroin. But I could do the day in between at this stage, no problem. So we bought a house. I bought a house up in Cardiff, not far from my mum's, and we moved in. That's when it started to get hard, Danielle, to hide it from Eilish, because you're living with her 24/7, and then, you know, so it got a little bit harder then, and she kind of figuring out little bits and pieces. It started to drop a little bit, but not much, you know. She really found out when we got married in 2004. We were on a honeymoon. We got married in Rome, Because my mum has a big family, she's 14 brothers and sisters, and Ailish's mum has a big family, 14 brothers and sisters. So a wedding would have been crazy, you know. And we thought, let's go to Rome. We'll get married in Rome, and we'll do it over there. I says, and we'll just bring whoever needs to come, will be there. And that's what it was, and it was a beautiful thing, and it was strange, you know. It's nuts because, you know, all through my life I know God, but yeah, I can see God, and we'll talk about it further on, how God was so involved in my life, because we were picking out a church to get married in Rome, and we picked the San Silvestro, and it was the only church that was marrying people on their own as a single. Otherwise it'd be these groups of people getting married together. So we picked this church out, and everything was grand, and we're coming up to the wedding, and I remember a priest, a local priest. He used to be my school teacher, Father Liam, used to be my school teacher and all, and a good family friend. He was after being back because a friend of his was killed in a hit and run in Blanchardstown village, and Liam would have been very close to his family. So Liam came back for the mass, and I remember after the mass walking up to him, and I knew Liam was working in Rome at this stage, and I remember walking up and saying, Liam, you're in Rome, aren't you? And he looked at me and he went, the 10th of September to San Silvestro at 10 o'clock. And I remember looking at him going, how do you know where I'm getting married? And he says, I'm marrying you. I says, how the hell are you marrying me? And he says, the church I'm getting married in there is a Palatine Father church. And he said, my parish church is a Palatine Father church as well. And he said, that's where I'm working. And it was mad. And he had married me 2 brothers. He baptised most of the children in the family, you know. And here I am going to Rome to get married. And I'm getting married by the same priest, you know. And I was going, this is crazy, yeah. So we went over and we got married. And I said, I brought a lot of methadone with me because at the time I just had to get it off someone, a bottle of it. And I was like, because I knew I was going to be away. And I wanted to get off the drugs because I was been on a bit of a drink and drug bender for a couple of months previous, you know, especially with the crack cocaine, and I was really, really thin, and I tried to grow my hair long to try and see would I look a little bit better, because I was about 8.5 stone, you know, and I went over and we went there, and we were 5 days in Rome. We got married, then we went to Florence for 5 days, and then we went to Sicily for 2 weeks. But when we were in Florence, one of the last days in Florence, I used to get up in the morning when Ailish be in the shower, and I'd drink my methadone in the locker, and I'd take that, and that set me up for the day. It was like, you know, I'd be grand. It was like a heroin substitute, and I'd be all right. But then this one morning I was after having a heap of drink the night before, and I get up and she knew she was nearly finished, and I was putting it into the glass, and then I put the bottle on the counter and it fell, and I went to pick the bottle up and I dropped the glass, and I was all over the place, and I'm trying to get this thing. There was a little dribble left in the bottle anyway. That got me to Sicily, and in Sicily I went through cold turkey. We were nearly 12 days in Sicily on a honeymoon, and I'm going through cold turkey, you know.
And would drink not help with something like that? So.
No, I tried. Believe me, John, I tried. I remember sitting at the bar one night in Sicily, and I think I drank a bottle of whiskey, and I was going through a bottle of brandy, and the barman just looked at me and he went, how are you still sitting there? There's absolutely no effect on the mind because your body's going through severe withdrawals from heroin. Whoa. Yeah. And you said, Darragh, then you dropped you were on crack cocaine as well. Yeah.
When that would have been early on for that stuff, and because that, again, that's a big switch in terms of it's a different drug. It's a very different drug than heroin.
Yeah.
You know, like even growing up, we saw it was just heroin addicts, and crack has only really, I've only seen it kick in the last few years. Yeah. Only the Irish addicts were more drawn to heroin.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's amazing how the different levels of addicts go, because other drug addicts look down on heroin addicts, but heroin addicts actually can look down on a crack addict.
I know,
it's like that's going lower again.
See, everybody wants to punch down, don't they? But they want, you know what I mean? They want to feel better than somebody else. Yeah. It's the same with discrimination. You want to feel better, you know, than that person, a middle class, a working class person, a traveller, whatever.
Yeah.
Everybody's wanting to, you know,
a little bit of step up. I'm not as
just
bad as
some
them,
sort of superiority over somebody. It's crazy.
Yeah. That happened. That came in, John, when I remember when I was during the midst of all that, when me and Ash had split up and all, and I knew I had to, I got more drugs to try pay back the debt. So I remember sitting there one day smoking heroin, and one of the lads that was in with us, you know, says, "Does that wash up?" I had a bar of coke, you know, and he says, "Does that wash up?" And I says, "What do you mean, does it wash up?" And he says, "Can you turn it into crack?" I says, "How would I supposed to know that you turn it into crack?" And he goes, "Give us a look at it." So he did the little magic steps and washed it up and turned it into crack, and he goes, "It does." I was like, "Oh, right. Did you ever do crack?" I said, "No." "Sure, I'll try it. May as well try it. I'm here now." Do you know what I mean? So I did, and that was, you know, that was a downfall. I always say heroin's like falling slowly off a hill. It's like falling slowly down a hill. crack is like jumping off a cliff. You're going to hit that ground very, very quick. You're going to hit your bottom very, very quickly. And I did. And I got caught up with a famous musician in Dublin as well at the time, who was a bad drug addict as well. And between me, him and another fella, the three of us were kind of like mixed in this little scene where we were doing a lot of these drugs together, yeah. And that was just before the wedding. So, you know, the weight really falls off you when you're on the crack diet. You know, it's like, it's a really, really...
Were you living with your fiance at the time?
Yeah,
and going out partying all the time? And was she with you or no?
No, Eilish would have just done the social drugs. She didn't do them drugs. She would have just went out on the weekend. She would drink, would have smoked joints. She would do a bit of coke, a few E's and stuff like that. But that was it, you know. Eilish could stop. I couldn't stop. I was addicted behaviour very, very young, you know. Even with alcohol when I was only a kid, I always wanted more and more. But no, she didn't. I was doing this, Danielle, when I was supposed to be working. So I was supposed to be in work.
Because I was going to say, me as a woman, I'd be like, where? Because I don't know, I would be like, where are you? And get out.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just very, so she's very, she was...
My family and Eilish used to be saying, you're losing loads of weight. And I'm like, I'm working all these hours to pay for this wedding, you know. I'm working all the hours under the sun.
You're a good actor.
I was after getting tax back. I was after getting about 28 grand off the tax man as tax back. I'd let it build up. I used to be C45 and I used to let it build up. It was actually, no, it was 19,000 something it was. And I was after letting it build up and I went and got it back just before the wedding. But I was out with this famous musician and my heroin dealer and we went on this mad benders, you know. And I remember going in and I had no money left. And I was supposed to pay for the wedding. I was supposed to get extra money for the wedding and all. So I was after getting a letter.
Yeah, that was a terrible feeling of doom, brother.
But being a good addict and being a good manipulator, John, I got the letter that I was after getting off the tax man to say that I was getting this few bob back. I brought it down to the credit union and I says to the manager in the credit union, look, this is on its way.
You're so smart.
I
might need you.
Can I borrow this? And she says to me, hold on. So she went into my account and she seen what I had in it and she says, I'll give you 16 grand. I said, that'll do, fine, lovely, happy days. I said, as soon as this comes in, I'm going to pay you back.
You are a hustler. You were a hustler.
So I did. And I got the money and I gave Eilish most of it. I kept about 4 or 5 grand. I gave Eilish most of it. And I said, Dad, you pay for whatever you have to pay for with the wedding. And I said, that was grand. Yeah, and she did that, you know. And that's when, you know, that really hit the fan then afterwards, then when we came back from the wedding and I was on this mad, I was, you know, because I went through cold turkey on the honeymoon and I had to tell her. And I broke her heart. You know, she says, you know, you tell me now after I'm married to you, you know. But I swore, and I really did when I told her that time that that was it, I was done. At that time, I thought when you just stopped taking the drugs, you were okay. You know, that was it. It's just the drugs was the problem. Stop the drugs and you'd be all right. But little did I know about the disease of addiction, because I was great in Sicily. For the last week, I was actually great. We had a great time. I was putting on loads of weight. We were eating, we were having a great time. But as soon as I hit that plane on the way home, I'm sitting on that plane on the way home, and the 3 hours or whatever it took to go home from Sicily, I had a plan. My head was already planning this and this and this in my head, you know. And it was amazing. And I came back to Dublin then and I was back at it. I was only going to do it once. That's what I said. I'll just have one more. But it wasn't. It never works out like that, you know. And then a couple of weeks later, then the credit union's knocking on the door. And looking, going, he's not paying his bill, you know, he's not paying the loan. And I just kind of look and go, what do you mean not paying? He hasn't got a loan. He's all right for money, you know. No problem with money. And I wasn't, you know what I mean? I was borrowed out to the max, yeah. And she found out. So, look, as I said again, I swore that I'd stop, and I did. And I made all these sweet promises. And I really, really tried. But I couldn't stop. I hadn't got the power. The power was not in me. I had all the willpower in the world. But the power to stop was not in me, as much as I wanted to. And that went on for a while, and she was tired of it then. She told me family then, my mum and my brothers and my dad and my brothers and all, and it was like they tried to help me out then as well. But I did home detoxes. My brother John used to bring me up to the mountains to go through cold turkey and do a detox up in the mountains, you know, to try and get away from society and go back to nature and stuff like that. But I'd come back and I'd tell them all I was clean again, and I'd be back at it again, you know. I'd have to go to work and I'd be back at it again, you know. And then they sent me over to England to do Detox 5, which is you're basically knocked to sleep for 5 days to withdrawal after heroin. So you're basically in a bed, half zombified, asleep, or your body's detoxing. And they kind of come around after the 5th day and you finish, you're over your withdrawals, and then they give you an opiate blocker to stop the opiates as you come back, and it was a little tablet. So I came back after paying €7,000. I had to get a loan off a family member, off an uncle of mine. I paid €7,000 for this. And on the Saturday, I could barely stand because I had been pumped with so much drugs. I couldn't see. I had sunglasses on like a blind man coming through Leeds airport. Someone had to guide me to me plane. When I gets on the plane, it gets off. My mum and dad were there waiting for me and brought me home. I remember coming in, sitting down, and I was there, it was grand, everything was all right. And Eilish, she says, I'm going to go up to my ma's, I'll let you go for a sleep. And I was like, grand. She only went out the door, and I got into the car, and I drove to Finglas to get a bag of heroin to see would these opiate blockers work. And they did. I didn't get stoned, and I was like, that's not great, So I kept having it, and I said, you know what I'll do? Tomorrow morning, I won't take the tablet, and I'll see if I can get stoned tomorrow morning. Like, literally, I had to pay $7,000. And a day after I come home, and the next day, Eilish came down, and I pretended to take this tablet. And I had this horrible face because it was a horrible taste off it. Naltrexone it was. And I remember shaking, and I was at to throwing her over the back wall, I was at to pay £90 for a month's subscription to these tablets. My brother John was at the bending over backwards to this pharmacy. He was a barber, and he knew this pharmacy was underneath his barber shop, and they bent over backwards to give him this, And I'm throwing them over the back wall. And I got stoned that day, and that was it then. I was back in the races again.
The power of addiction there. Wow. You were just saying as well about you were always like all in. And was that genetic, do you think, or was it I don't want to pry, but was it something from your childhood, or where do you think that was coming from?
No, my mum always says, and I've done a few talks, testimonies, my mum always said, I got taste of alcohol quite young, back in the 80s, it'd be nothing to finish off the end of a drink, your mad-ass drink, or a pint of Guinness, and you throw a bit of Coke into it, and you'd think you have your own pint of Guinness with the lads in the pub, because you'd have a little head on your little glass of Coke and stuff like that. That was it. That was the norm back in the 80s. It wasn't frowned upon.
It was in the 90s as well, in the late 90s for me. I remember in the 2000s, my uncle gave me when I was 11, this is 2001, my uncle gave me 4 cans of Dutch Gold, yeah? And my brother Joe, who was 10, he got 2 cans of it.
Yeah.
And we were mouldy.
Yeah.
And this was the day before Christmas Eve, and me and Joe were like that, we're going, oh, mommy, and my mother thought we had brain damage, the two of us. Did you fall off the wall? Because we had these huge walls, the council built huge walls around us to hide us off from the rest of the society, but we were always falling off the wall. She thought we fell off the wall, yeah, we told her she went over nearly. But but that is something that you would see more in a working class culture and a traveller culture. Asher go on, and I often see, and I go on, give me a little something for the laugh.
God, we must be from I'm working class, mate. We'd have got a good slop.
Well,
I didn't.
So maybe it's another thing.
I was about 5 years of age, and my mum and dad would have a little party, right? And a few neighbours would come in and stuff like that after the pub, and there was little bottles of Harper Smithwick's, little glass bottles of Harper Smithwick's, and I used to get one of these, and they'd give me a cigar. So the bottle was me like microphone and a cigar, and I used to sing Stevie Wonder, I just called to say I loved you, or the other one, I should have known better. They were my 2 little party pieces, right? So I get up and I do these little party pieces, and they'd open the beer for you at the end and say, there you go, have a drink, that was it.
We would have had parties in our house growing up more like Christmas time, and all my family, mummy said and daddy said would have came, but no, I think we had the fear of God in us. Yeah. we wouldn't have touched nothing. Now, when my mummy passed away is whenever everything kind of spiraled in our lives and probably got a bit more fearless. Maybe she was I don't know, what we feared her, I think, more than my daddy. It must be an Irish mummy. Yeah, we need to be fearful. Keep you in line.
Yeah. No, and like I mean, my mum always thinks was it that, but it wasn't, because I have 2 older brothers and a younger sister, and they're not addicts.
Yeah. So that's what I'm on about. Is it a genetic thing or something? Or
I personally think it's circumstances. It's an environment, John. Environment. Like as I said, I grew up the exact same way as my 2 brothers. Now my 2 brothers would be a year between John and Jay, so they would have been very, very close. Right, there's 6 years then after Jay. There's about 6 years from me. So I would have grown up kind of, and then my sister Claudia is about 7 or 8 years younger than me, and she's the only girl. So John and Jay were growing up, and I was always the little one getting in the way, man, this, that, and the other. So I always feel that they were close, and I was kind of on my own. So the environment then, they would have grown up, it would have been alcohol a lot in the air and stuff. The drugs would have been there, but they wouldn't have been as noticeable. And then say when I was growing up, then the hash and the party scene, like the rave scene was only starting. John and Jay were older, like John was actually locked up and Jay had a kid. So they were kind of over them stages where I was only 13, 14, starting to come into this phase in my life. So I think environment has a lot to do with it. And then just, I don't think you're genetically, unless you were born an addict or an alcoholic, you know.
Yeah, I just wonder
but I think it's environment, John, because, as I says, my other two older brothers and my younger sister, they have no problems. They like a drink, they can do it, they can stop. It doesn't interfere with their life.
Yeah, and you just went up and you came up in a different era.
Yeah.
I suppose with the genetic component, it's more what I think is that, someone who has a sort of psychological makeup for the extreme.
Yeah.
Or for the all in or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that goes a long way.
Because that could manifest in many different ways, you know what I mean?
But growing up, as I said, with me karate, then with football, I played for one of the best schoolboy teams in the country, and then with me work, I was really into me work. So whenever I do something, it's like, boom.
You don't do it half-hours?
No. Half measures of aid.
I'm laughing because I'm the same.
Yes.
I'm the exact same. That's why I'm laughing.
So if you keep it positive,
exactly.
and it's always a good thing.
Then it's great.
I mean, even today in my life today, with God and stuff like that, it's in the same aspects of it. But it's crazy stuff.
So do you know, along the line of all the stuff you were going through, and that's heavy stuff. Did you ever have, that conversation with God just in your head? Sometimes when you're in the pits or something like, because I often, when with me in the past and in a mad bender, or I just have that conversation with God. Did you ever have those moments at all?
It wasn't so much in them days, John. My concept of God back then was very construed. It was very, I didn't believe in God that I have today, It was like, is he alien? Is he an alien? Because I used to watch Ancient Aliens. I'd be sitting on the chair, mamboed, half like watching Ancient Aliens, getting brainwashed by this crazy stuff going on inside my head, that he's an alien and he's this and it's that and all that, But it wasn't really, because, I hadn't really seen God in my life. I hadn't let him into my life. And, I was just so caught up in Darragh. I said, I had a beautiful son born in 2008, and I swore. I remember standing in the hospital looking at Frankie, and he was a big boy, big baby, 10.5 pounds. And I remember standing there, and ages after I had to go through a section, and she knew, because when I left the hospital, I was dying sick. My pupils were like 8 balls, and I went out for 2 o'clock in the morning. When I came back in at 6 o'clock the next morning, she knew by looking at me that I was after going off and using. And I remember standing there looking at this baby going, right, that's it. I'm going to give up the drugs for you. I have a beautiful baby boy. I have everything to live for now. But I couldn't, I was back at it and I couldn't stop. God, I had heard really, was 2010 would have been the first time I kind of started to have some conception of God. And it would have been when I went to treatment, and Father Liam, who married me, gave me a number of a treatment centre down in Enfield, Father Dennis. And he would have just go down there, because I'd nowhere else to go. Elders was had to throw me out, and I was redundant. I actually walked in the church, John, Dominic Street Church, from 2005 to 2009. And I used to walk in the church, and I walked in God's house. But I'd seen a different side to the church then. And don't get me wrong, a lot of them priests in there were lovely men, but I seen the business end of it. And I'm saying this because I'm coming from a sick person as well. I was very sick, because I would have been at the depths of my addiction then as well. And I'm looking at that, But I seen a business end to the church then as well. So I was like, that's not even them, you know what I mean? And I used to steal money from them, and sometimes like that, when I was desperate, and I used to rationalise it. I say, sure, they're causing trouble, they're abusing kids, and they're doing this, and they're doing that, and that was me justifying it. So I hadn't really got a close relationship with God. But there was sometimes, I remember seeing a statue of, he died down in Granby Lane, and they have a statue of him in there, Dublin. It's just gone out of my mind there now.
Is it a saint, or?
He's an Irish. My brain's gone blank. He's
I hate that.
It'll come back.
Yeah, it'll pop back into me head now in a second.
Mid-sentence, and then you'll be like, it's...
it'll just pop back in now in a minute. But he's done a lot of work. He died at the back of Dominic Street Church, and they had a little statue in Dominic Street, and people used to come in and they'd pray to him and stuff like that. And he was an alcoholic himself. And he used to go around and he used to help other people then. And I remember thinking to myself, do you know what? that's. I used to get a little solace in him because I could identify with him. I couldn't identify with this God that I knew, John. This God who judge you, and that I thought, you know, I didn't know anything of it. My concept was he's going to judge me. I have to be right. I'm never going to be right, and he's doing all this wrong, and all this wrong that's going on in the world, and all this stuff that's happening. You know, if there was a real God, why doesn't he sort this out? And also, that's why I couldn't identify with that, but I could identify with this guy, and I used to sit there and I'd be like, yeah, because I could feel his suffering. He was an alcoholic, and that was it. Then I left there then, and I was down to treatment. I got men into Enfield, Father Dennis down in Enfield, and there was lads down there that were drug addicts in recovery, and they used to walk down there, and they used to help us through, and they had done a 12-step program, and in that 12-step program, you had to go, you had to get a God. Now, it was classed as a God of your understanding, so you could make up your own concept of God. But I had heard about it there, and they were like, you know, you have to meditate, and you try to do your prayers and do meditation. And that was the kind of force. But I ended up going after that treatment centre, going and doing a day programme, in Kilmoyne day programme, and it was like Lord Edward Street. And it was in at 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock, and it was all this psychology. So whatever kind of thing I had with God, it was kind of pushed out. I used to go to meetings, and I'd go to this day programme, and I had an ego the size of a football pitch, you know. And when I always say, when ego's in your head, there's no God in your head. And I had this, and I was like, you know, I knew it all. I had all the psychology, I had everything, I had it licked. And my daughter was born when I was in that day centre. She was born the day I was a year clean and sober. She was born on the 4th of February 2011. And I got clean on the 10th or the 4th of February 2010. So the day I'm a year clean and sober, I'm a little beautiful little girl. And I'm looking at this beautiful little girl, and my mindset had completely changed because I wasn't on drugs for Florentine. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, do you know what I mean? This is it now, I'm sorted. But as I said, I had all the psychology in my life, but I'd no God in my life. And I'd no program. I'd heard about the steps, but I didn't want to do them. I was going to do it Darragh's way. And I found drugs in my shed about 2 months after Florrie was born, and I found drugs in my shed, 2 bags of heroin that I had lost about 4 or 5 years previous. And I battled for about 2 hours in my shed that day. And I was like, do it, don't, do it, don't. I had like 2 voices. This one telling me do, this one telling me don't. And I was coming up with all these excuses and all, you know. And eventually I was in that place where I said, should I there 5 years? They're not even going to roll in the tinfoils, you know what I mean? So I got tinfoil, I put them on, and they did, and they rolled, and that was it. I went back to the races, and that was it, you know, because, you know, once I put a drug or a drink inside my body, that's it. I can't stop what's coming, you know, and that's why I have to abstain from it all now. But I knew that then, but I didn't really, you know, I didn't understand it. And I did. I went back. I said, I'd no defence against it, you know. I had no program, and I had no God in 2011. And here I am, and I'm back at the races. And then about 6 or 7 months later, Eilish found out. And it was like, get out of the house. She was just fed up and tired, and she was broken this time because she really thought, you know. But, you know, I think my ego and stuff like that, she knew something wasn't right, because I wasn't the way I am today, you know what I mean? I was all this real, like, I knew it all. Sometimes she used to think, he's probably better off back on the drugs than he is now in this new lifestyle that he's living, because I was constantly running to meetings. I have to get to a meeting, I have to go here, and I have to do this, and you don't understand, it's all about my feelings, it's all about this, all this psychology stuff, you know. But I'm back in my mum and dad's, and I thought to myself, I really had to get something going here, you know, I can't do this any longer. And I went back into the day programme to try to get clean, and I'm in a drug-free day programme, still using, right? I get random urines. Now, that's how good I was. I could give a random urine on the spot, right? And go in with someone standing there watching you, and I could give a urine, a fake urine. You know what I mean? That's how good my mind was, you know what I mean? I could do that without them copping on and give it to them. And I got into that program. I was about 4 months into it. And I ended up saying to myself, it was coming up near Christmas, and I thought, I can't keep doing this. You know, something's got to give. You know, with no money, I couldn't feed my drug addiction, and it was miserable anyway. So I thought, right, I got methadone and sleeping tablets, and I did a home detox in my mum and dad's bedroom, their box bedroom. And I thought, right, and I was about 2 or 3 weeks clean and sober, and it was great, you know. And I'll never forget, it was coming up to Christmas, and I Saturday night, my dad, I was in the sitting room with him, and we were listening to Tony Bennett. My mum was up in bed. She was sick. And I remember sitting there about 1 or 2 in the morning, and my dad turns and he says, do you know what, Darragh? He says, I'm so proud of you. He says, you know, how far you have to come in now, he says. He says, when you told me you were on heroin, he says, I knew it was going to be very hard. He says, but do me a favour, he says, will you? He says, if you ever fall off the horse, he said, will you just get back up on it? And I remember sitting there and I says, I will, Dad. And I stood up and I gave him a hug, you know, and I said, I love you, Dad, thanks. And he says, I love you too. Right? It was a lovely moment with Tony Bennett in the background, you know. So I went off up to bed, John, and I got up on the Sunday. I was doing a bit of work for my brother on the Sunday. And he came in to me, and he came over to me on the Sunday night and gave me dinner, and I had a little chat with him, and he was off to work, and I was supposed to go back into this day programme for aftercare the next day, you know. And that was the last I seen my dad live. He went out on the 19th of December 2011, he went out to work, and the next time I seen him was on a trolley coming in casualty in Blanchardstown Hospital. He had a massive heart attack. And that broke me. That really broke my heart, that did, you know. Because this man was so much in my life. He was there for me, you know. He was there for me from start to finish, and he was after dying, you know. And I was like, yeah, it broke me and it broke my family, because we were a very tight family. We were a great family, you know, and it broke us up, you know. I managed to get a couple of weeks clean and sober after that Christmas. I don't know how I stayed clean and sober after that Christmas, but I went back at it soon after that, and I went back at it really hard, you know. There was no stopping it this time, because I had a bit of guilt and shame around my dad's death as well, because I was at the fighting with Eilish, and he rang me that morning to see where I was, because he thought I was in town in my day programme, that he wanted me to meet up with him. And it's mad, because there was no work in the building game at that stage, and I went back to do a course to be a healthcare assistant, because there was loads of work in that. And I was after completing a first aid course the week beforehand. And the guy says to me, hand me the certificate. He says to the class, he says, there's an 80% chance that the first person you're going to use this on is a member of your family. So I took it off. I went the next Monday then, a week or two later, my dad had a massive heart attack, and my brother John was driving him to the hospital. And I thought, if I had been in the day programme, I would have been with him. I would have been able to be there. I had all this thing in my head that maybe I could have saved my dad, you know, if I hadn't done what I did the night before. Different things like that, you know. But then I had to really do a bit of work around that and think, who am I to play God? I can't, you know, save someone's life. Or, you know, if it was to be, it was to be. But I hit a lot of guilt and shame and stuff like that hit me hard. And when I relapsed after my dad's death, I relapsed really hard at it. But I still managed to hold down jobs. I was going around caring for people. I was, you know what I mean, doing things like that, and still managed to work. But they kept giving me people that were coming home to die of cancer. And I'm here, and I'm only getting over my dad's death, and this person has only a couple of days left to live, and I'm trying to care for them, and that they're dying. And I'm going back to the place, and I'm ringing the office up, and I'm saying, listen, you know what I mean, you're sending me out to someone else. I'm not a palliative care worker, I'm only a healthcare assistant. But you're great, the family are saying you're great with them and stuff like that. I said, I don't realise every time some of them dies, just like my dad dying all over again. It's too early for me. You know, are you going to pay for counselling? Oh, no. You'll be all right. Just do what you have to do. And after about 7 or 8, I was like, nah, here, I'm done. You know, so I was emigrating. I was going to looking for work, going back on the tools. And I said there was no work in Dublin at the time after the crash in 2008. The city was still bad. And I remember I'm going to Canada, and I had it all set up, and I went to Eilish. I thought, you know, geography, if I get out of Ireland, I'll be all right. I can get away from the drugs. And I remember going to Eilish saying, listen, I'm going to go to Canada. Do you want to come and the kids? And I remember thinking, yeah, you go. You know what I mean? Because you're probably saying to herself, if I go over there with you, you're going to leave me over there on my own, like what you did here. So I thought, I'll go on my own first, and I'll set everything up and see how I get on. And I had everything sorted out. I just needed a reference. And I was like, I've been self-employed for so many years, I'd no one to get a reference off of. So I went in and I got a reference off the fella I served my apprenticeship for. And Richard said to me, he said, I'm working in Dublin, a big job in Dublin, about a year's work here, do you want to stay? So I ended up staying, and that was it. The rest was history. But I tried many days over the next few years. I'd still know God, John, and I tried many years and methadone programs and every different method to try to get clean and sober. And none of it worked. And I remember me and Eilish split up. We actually separated, you know what I mean? She couldn't take it anymore. And I remember I used to drop the kids to school. And a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, I grew up with him, I used to see him and his wife going into mass. And I remember looking, going, I'd love to be like that. So I started going into mass. After I dropped the kids to school, I'd go into mass, and I'd sit there and I'd listen to the mass and all that. Still wasn't getting a lot out of it, but there was something starting to resonate inside me, you know. I was getting drawn more and more towards God a little bit, you know. And then I suppose then it took another few years before I really was. And it was really in August 2022, I was so battered and bruised. I mean, I've titanium elbows. I've bits missing out my fingers from damage. I've scars where drill bits and all went through me during walk, from drinking and drugging while I was walking. You know, accidents and stuff like that. Loads of money and different claims I was after getting, and all just blown on drugs, you know. Getting paid great money for running jobs, looking after jobs, performing in jobs, and just blowing it all on drugs, you know. So I was battered and broke. I'm 8 stone from the crack, the heroin, tablets, weed and alcohol, you know, every day, all of them. Some days, whatever I could have, depending on whatever money I had. And I physically really couldn't really do a day's work. You know, I had every hour I had to stop to get something into me. And I wasn't really doing much, you know. So it was a horrible existence, but I couldn't stop. I lived in the back of my van, kind of, you know, because there was more times in the back of the van, smoking or doing something to hide it so people wouldn't see me. Me and Irish were walking past each other in the house, and the kids were looking at their dad, you know, shell of a man, you know, constantly erratic, coming in, rushing, always had to do something, always an urgent plan to get somewhere to do something, you know what I mean? And it was a horrible existence. But in 2022, in the August, I was very thin, and my family, my son's birthday, and my family were over, and they were like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, yeah, you know. And every time I used to see my ma, I love her, she used to say, "Are you all right?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'm grandma." And she'd be looking at this fella, and he's a shell, and she can see it in him, but I'm grand, no problem, you know. My family as well, you know. I fell out with my brother, my oldest brother John, who was very close to me and always stood by me with my addiction over. He knew what I was up to as well, and the lies and stuff like that. So I'm broken, and I'm telling them all I'm vomiting burger, I've this, that or the other. And on that Tuesday, Eilish went to work, and I got up and I got sick in the toilet. And I remember after that, I was like shaking in the bed. And my daughter Florentina, she was 11, she came in to me and she said, "Dad, you all right?" And I says, "I am, honey," I says, "I just have the vomiting bug." And she looked, and I seen the fear in her eyes. And I remember my dad died when I was 33, and I was still trying to get over him. And I knew I was going to die if I kept going the way I was going, and I was going to leave these 2 kids and my wife and my family. And I thought, I can't do this. And she left. She turned around, she says, "When you're a little bit better, Dad, I'll make you a cup of tea." And I said, "Thanks, hon." So she closed the door. And I remember looking, sitting in the bed, and I just said to myself, I can't do this. I really can't do this. And I got out of bed and I got on my knees and I just looked up and I just said, "Dad, please help me." And for the first time, John, I said, "God, please help me. I can't do this." And that, I think in that moment, I surrendered. I surrendered to my addiction. Because I always thought Darragh could do it. I have the strength. I can do it when I really want to do it. I just didn't really want to do it yet. But that moment I surrendered, I knew I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I am really done. And I said to myself, right, so I had enough methadone in the wardrobe to feed an army. I didn't do any hard drugs that day. It was a Tuesday, and I took some methadone, but it kept coming back up. I kept getting that hit my stomach, could just come back up. Mm-hmm. So I was taking little sips. I got through that day, the next day, and the next day. And I remember as I was feeling a little bit better, the thoughts had come back into my head, but I was like, I really can't do this. So on a Saturday morning, I go to a local meeting in my area, and I hadn't slept really, because I'd enough methadone. I was taking a lot of methadone, but I'd all the crack, the tablets, and the weed and all that, and the alcohol, the withdrawals from them. I'd anxiety, I'd fear, palpitations, all this mad stuff going on, right? And I'm going into the church, and I said to myself, the AA meeting wasn't on until 11:30, and it's about 9:30, and I knew the church would be opened. And I said, I'm going in, because my dad had a little plaque at the back of the church. I said, I'm going to go in and say a little prayer to my dad. And I went into the church, and I was the only one in it. And I said a little prayer to my dad. And I looked up, and Our Lady's on the right-hand side of the altar. And I went over to her, and I lit a candle, and I said a prayer to Our Lady. And Sacred Heart of Jesus is on the left-hand side of the altar. So I went over to him, and I lit the candle. Now, I didn't look at the Lord. I just looked at the candle, and I remember looking and saying, "God, please help me." I says, "You are the only one that can do this." I says, "I don't want to die, but I don't want to live like this." And as I said it, I looked at the Lord and I just said, "Please, God, help me. I can't do this on my own." And when I said it, I didn't see his hand moving, but something touched my shoulder that morning, and I felt like an electric shock. Every hair on my body stood up. And I remember jumping back going, and then I started crying, uncontrollably sobbing. I mean, like I never sobbed before. These tears just started coming out of me. And I remember shaking, and this little voice inside my head said, Darragh, you've done it now, the drugs have done it. Do you know what I mean? But I heard this voice, and this voice was from deep inside, and it was loving and caring and kind of a nice voice, and it just said, Darragh, everything is going to be all right. And as soon as he said that to me, that was it. The fear, anxiety, cold turkey, sweats, everything I was feeling, it was just like someone pulled the plug and it drained completely out of me. I remember for the first time probably in my whole life, I stood here in front of the statue thinking and felt serenity and thinking to myself, I'm going to be all right here. And I don't know how long I was there for, crying and that, but I remember the local priest, Father John, came running down from the sacristy, and he kind of looked, and he says, Darragh, are you okay, yeah? And I told him what happened. I says, I am now, Father. I said, the big man has me back. And he looked at me and I explained what happened. And I says, listen, Father, I said, I need confession and I need a few resentments with the church. I need to get them off my chest. So we went off up to the room and I got the resentments off my chest first. I had a chat with him and I told him, and he says, no problem, you wouldn't be the only one with them resentments. And I says, right. I says, and now, I said, but I was a very sick person and I told him, I'm abusing this for the last 25 years. That was grand. And I got confession. I floated out of that church that day. I floated.
The power of that is unbelievable.
I don't know. I had something different now, John. I said I had God now, I went to my meeting and they looked at me and they thought these big red eyes from crying. They asked me, was I all right? And they told me, you just had a spiritual experience. I said, I don't know what I'm after having, but I ain't letting it go. I went home that night and I prayed. The next night I prayed. Sunday morning I went down to Mass and I got Mass that morning. And I says to myself, right, I couldn't walk, physically couldn't walk. So I went to Mass on the Monday morning. I went to Mass on the Tuesday morning. I received the Eucharist and Holy Communion, and I was just, I was giving it. I was at the feeling something different was after happening. It was like this power that I never had before.
The Holy Spirit.
I said I hadn't got the power to give up drinking drugs. It had to come from somewhere else, and it had to come from God, the power greater than me. And I was at the feeling that, and then the next week I says, right, that's it. I come off 70 mils of methadone, which is not advisable. That's a lot, And I went through 4 weeks of cold turkey in my house, but I didn't care because I was like, I had God in my life. I used to pray and I'd say, right, get me through this today. Get me through today. Get me through this hour. And I'd pray, and I did. And I used to listen to the original program, and I used to listen to it on the speaker because I couldn't read because my eyes was all blurry, so I couldn't read the book. And I had to listen to it in an audio version, so I'd be listening to it. Because I says, because I'm awake, you're awake 20 hours of the day. You're lucky if you get 2 hours sleep, an hour sleep, 2 hours sleep, And I had said, what did I not do the last time that I got clean and sober? I never did the 12 steps. So I got a guy who could identify with, showed me, and I knew he lived his life the way I wanted to live my life. And I asked him. So he said, yeah. So I said, when I get myself together, I'm going to do the 12 steps. So I did, and I was listening to the book, and I was praying, I was listening to the book. And as each day was going by, I was getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and I was going down to church and I was back in faith. And Father John says to me, he says, Darragh, we're going to Medjugorje in May. And he says, I'd love you, you're coming. No, you did it. He says, you're coming. And I says, right, I'll try to get the money together. And he says, you're coming. And that was it, So Christmas came, and it was an amazing Christmas, clean and sober. I was doing little days here and little days there just to get a few bob up, but not too much because I didn't want to push myself too much. I was doing a few days here and there. And the little bit of money I had left in savings and that I didn't go through, I kind of, I was giving it to Eilish to get a few bits and pieces. So we were all right there. And I remember he came to me in the January, and I used to go to Friday night masses at the end of the month. Every Friday we'd have a vocations mass in St. Patrick's Parish in Cardiff. And I heard one or two speakers, a lot of priests, and they talked of different things, but there was one or two guys that gave their testimony that was in addiction. And they blew me away, So after Christmas, myself and Father John are sitting there with Anne O'Connell having tea after one of his after one Wednesday morning mass. He used to have a cup of tea and a slice of toast with them. and we're talking, and they hadn't got a speaker for the January. And we're sitting there, and between talking to them, they looked and they kind of went, I mean, we have you. Why don't you go up and do your testimony? And I thought, right, okay. So I got up and I shared my testimony. And it kind of like the church, my home parish, and a lot of people were there. It was an amazing experience to share my story with all these people, because I hid this secret life. Half of them, they didn't know to the extent of what I was taking. Most of them didn't. You know, they knew I looked crap and stuff like that because I was so thin. But I denied it, and they didn't think, oh, heroin, crack, not him. Do you know what I mean? Not him. So here I am standing in my church sharing, you know, the guilt and the shame was gone. You know, addiction had no power over me anymore. I didn't mind freely talking about it, you know, because I had God in my life. You know, I felt everything so much easier once I had God in my life. I went to Medjugorje in the May, and that changed everything. I used to walk the dog at night and I'd listen to the earphones, you know. I went to Medjugorje in May, and the parish went over, and I had really, really blown away by that. I was. The talks the Father Leon used to do, you know, adoration. I found out what adoration was in Medjugorje. I didn't know anything about adoration. I remember Father Leon saying you can just sit there with peace and quiet with God. You don't have to talk to him, you don't have to pray to him. You can just sit there in stillness and be with God. And I remember sitting there, you know, and for the first time in my life, I could sit there with no music, no one talking, just sit there in God's presence and feel it. And it was an amazing feeling. Sacrament of reconciliation, you know, confession. I got confession with Father John that day in the church, but I don't really know what I said because I was on such a high after what had happened to me at the altar. I don't really remember much about my confession with Father John. So I remember fasting on the Friday in Medjugorje because I heard about fasting. Now, I'd heard about fasting for health purposes beforehand, you know, but this I knew then. So I heard in Medjugorje about the spiritual aspect of it. So I was fasting on the Friday, and everyone else in the group that we were with were all having their dinner. And I said, you know what, I'm going to confession. So I went and I found the priest, and I sat there, and for about 45 minutes, I gave confession, and I cried best part of 25, 30 minutes through it. I poured my life out. It was the first time in probably 35 years that I knew what I was actually saying, and I meant it. And God love the priest, yeah. I came out of confession that day, and I just sat with myself just outside the back of St. James's, you know, in the open where the benches are and everything like that, and those adoration was going on then, and I was just sitting there, and I had a most wonderful experience. I felt at peace. I was at the giving out because I had stopped now. I was about 6 or 7 months clean and sober, but I'd still a lot of guilt, I'd still a lot of shame. And even though I'd done a 12-step program and I read out a 4th step, which is, you know, it's like a big confession of your life and sins, and then there's all the stuff that I've done wrong and all your fears and all the harms you've done to people, and I made amends to some of these people at this stage. I had still had a lot. I couldn't forgive myself. I still like I was holding on to a lot of stuff, but here after this confession, I felt at ease. I was like, really, like, you know, right, that's it, you know. And that night then, that Friday night, we were having the crack with the group, and I went to bed about 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember waking up about 4 o'clock. Something woke me, you know, and I woke up and I was fresh-eyed, and I remember sitting there going, I'm going up to Our Lady. I put my boots and my shorts on. Ailes was still fast asleep, and off I went. I went up to Our Lady. I was going through the little field, and the heavens opened up. A thunder and lightning storm at 4:30 in the morning, and I was drowned. And I remember standing there looking in the field, just looking up, saying, okay, Our Lady, you wanted to clean me? Yeah, cleaning me now, you know. And I was torrential rain, you know, but I didn't care. I had my rosary beads, it was warm, and I was going up to Our Lady. So I got up the hill, and I'm sitting there, and I said my rosary with her, and then I sat over where Jesus is, you know, sitting under the crucifix there. And it was starting to wake up. The world was starting to wake up. You know, I could hear the cocks crowing. You could hear the dogs in the distance starting to bark and all that. And I remember walking down the mountain, Apparition Hill, and I remember crying, but it was a different sort of a cry. This was like a real healing crying. I was getting confession the day before, and I was still feeling, I'm coming down the mountain, and I remember just feeling really, really, like, you know, I was gratitude and love in the deepness of my heart. And I was like, this is it, you know, this is the life. Yeah. I went down and I had breakfast with the guys, and I was talking to them, and that was Medjugorje, you know. I learned praying the rosary, the power of the rosary in Medjugorje. I'd heard about the rosary, but it was like, that was this ordeal, you know. There's 50 Hail Marys, 5 Our Fathers and 5 Glory Bees and a heap of other prayers in the middle of it, you know. But in Medjugorje, it didn't seem that like a chore. I was just rhyming with the group. I was just rhyming rosaries out. It was great. You're walking down the street and it'd be like meeting people that you didn't even know and start praying a rosary with them. I was like, wow. You know, and I brought my wife over there thinking I was going with a load of holy joes. You know, I'm going, what's she going to think when we get over there? You know, all these people, holy joes out of the parish. Little did I know, you know, she loved it. She fell in love with it as well. And the experience we had over there with the community that we went over was amazing. And Father Leon had a couple of chats with Father Leon, but Father John got me to read in the English speaking mass on the second last day over there. I remember he came over to me, handed me this letter, big page, you know, and the night before, and he says, you're reading that tomorrow in mass. And I'm looking, I go, no, give me a little prayer of the faithful, I'll do that. Not this, like first reading, you know, all these big words. And he says, no better, man, you know. And I was like, I remember sitting there at the side of the altar before I was going up to the mass, and I could see my heart beating. I could see it. I'm going, and my legs, and I was trembling, and I'm going, how am I going to? And I remember just sitting there, and I always say the serenity prayer in my head: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying the serenity prayer, and I just says, okay, God, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing this for you. Please, just let me voice be clear and crisp. You know what I mean? I don't care. I got up on the ambium and I'm saying the prayers. And I'm halfway through and I could feel my legs, my arms start to shake first, right? Then I could feel my legs starting to shake. And I feel like I'm shaking this whole ambium here in front of me, right? But my voice dead strong, you know, and I was there. Because all during that week, the people that were reading, we couldn't really hear. And I have hard of hearing anyway, because I'm working with tools and the music and everything else from over the years. I find it hard to hear certain things anyway. Well, I don't say hard, it's selective hearing. I can hear what I want. But I couldn't hear these people. And I remember Father John telling me, no, just be clear, in your voice, just be clear. And I was. And someone came up to me afterwards and she says, you proclaimed the gospel today. That was great. And Father Leon came over to me afterwards, you know, and it was great. It was a lovely feeling, you know, and I was like, right. And I came home from Medjugorje and I was like, right, I joined the parish council in my local church. And I still signed up to do readings on a Sunday morning in mass. And when I'd walk the dog at night, the earphones got ditched and I brought my rosary beads. Amazing. And I start saying the rosary. When I'm out walking the dog, I start saying the rosary. Now, I had to bring the book the first few times because I had to learn the different mysteries and the different days. And it took me a while to learn them, you know. But after doing that, Medjugorje was amazing. After I did my testimony, I met Damien, came up to me after I did my testimony in Cardiff Church, and he says, Darragh, he says, you know, I didn't know Damien. I knew his father from the going to when I started going back to mass, the first time I started going back before the COVID, and I met his father, and we used to have great talks with his father, but I didn't make the connection yet. But Damien came up and he says, look, I'm out and I want to start a prayer group and I'd love you to be part of it. So we did. And Father Adrian Crowley is a priest, a local priest from the next parish up in Ladyswell, and he let us use the church, and we used to have lads up there on a Friday night, the first Friday of every month, we'd have a men's prayer group, and it'd be lads in recovery, we'd get together, we'd pray the rosary, we'd have a chat and a cup of tea, and it was brilliant, and we were bringing lads from all over the country together. And
obviously you were affected by your testimonial, the lads, and seeing where you came from as well, because that sort of heard like that you're getting people in and people are coming in because they're kind of recognising what happened to you. And
John, I always asked afterwards, I always say to myself, you know, why me? You know, why did God pick me? But then I also feel that, you know, because I have this unique gift of that I was in the depths of hell, you know, and if other people can identify with me and say my story, and you know yourself, addiction is so rampant out there now in today's world, that if people can see a little bit of hope from my story and get a little bit of hope, you know, well, so be it, all the better. And that's what, you know, we used to, and people used
that's
to...
why he chose you. Yeah. That's why he chose you. He's using you because, you know, the message of like, you can always come back. Yeah. There's no road that's too far gone. No. You know what I mean? And your story is clearly that. Yeah. And he's thinking, I'm going to use him. And people are going to see his story. Yeah. You know, because even looking at you now, Darragh, just now, me looking at you, I would have never thought you lived the life as an addict. No. Because you look like a fresh, like, you know what I mean, well-built fella. I don't see that, you know what I mean? Yeah. But, and you know, I can see that you've the joy in your heart as well. Yeah. Like, you know, that image of you going down Apparition Hill, and I actually got a tear in my eye, you know, because it was so beautiful, because of that joy that you had in your heart, and God was touching you there, and like all that pain and trauma, and all the suffering that you went through, and couldn't get out of it, and then you're walking down that hill, and you're being touched like it. That's so powerful. And to anybody out there who are in the depths, like honestly, right now with journalists, I was going, I need to send this podcast to a couple of people in particular, you know, to give them hope, because that's what it's all. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
The message is God is good.
Oh,
like how good is He? Like, and people still to this day can't see it, and it's like, look at how He is transforming. I mean, you were in the pits of hell, as you said. Did you think, you kept saying, I can't get over this, I can't, and every time you tried, you fell. How long have you been sober?
3 years. In the start of September, it's been 3 years. Clean and sober from everything. Not even a disprin have I taken. You know.
Prior to God, how long did you stay sober?
How long?
Like, how long would you through all your patches?
14 months in 2010.
Was the longest.
Was the longest, yeah. But I hadn't got the quality of life I have now, Danielle.
Yeah.
I was sober, but I was crazy. I was crazy.
You were sober, but you weren't sober.
I wasn't sober.
Yeah.
I hadn't got stillness. I hadn't got peace. I hadn't got content. I hadn't serenity. I had none of the things that I have today, you know. Today, I live my life for God. You know, He's the most important. I said to my wife there about 2 years ago, I said, hey, there's someone else in this relationship. I have to tell you. And she looked at me, you know, and I said, Jesus, God is in their relationship. And she says,
absolutely.
Well, that's all right, she says. That's okay, she says. I can live with that, you know, because I feel that if I have God in my life, and if I put God first above everything else in my life is going to be perfect.
So we say.
We always say that.
If I put God first, because if I go on Darragh's will, which is my third step of my programme, is turn my will and my life over to the care of God, right? And when I do that, I get up every morning, I get out of bed every morning, I get on my knees, and I say, right, God, help me to be a better husband, a better father, a better son, a better brother, a better neighbour. Help me to do thy will, not my will. Help me to do thy will.
Yeah.
Right? Guide me through this day. I give it to you, right? And I go out then and I try, right? Now, there's sometimes during the day I'll try take my will back and I'll try run on Darragh's will, but I'll feel that, you know. I know I'll be here, but I'm going, okay, sorry, I'm going to give it back to you, you know. But I try give it over to God, because I know if I'm running on God's will, my day is going to go smoothly, and I'm going to be doing the right thing for my wife, for my kids, for my family, for my neighbours, for my community. I'm going to be doing the right thing, you know. And it's so important, you know what I mean, because it's like what He's done for my life. As I just heard the madness of my life. Today, my life is the total opposite. It's so simple. My life today is so simple, you know, from someone that couldn't lie straight in the bed because I told that many lies, you know, because I had a different face.
What a way to put it.
You know, my wife, I would have been easier for me to tell people, listen, I'm a drug addict.
Yeah.
You know, but the guilt, the shame, the feeling that I felt with all that, I couldn't tell anyone anything. So I'd lied to everybody. I was lying to everybody I met. Today, the simplicity of that, you know, not to have to try to go off and get drugs, not to have to do this, not to be worried about how am I going to get it, I'm going to get into me, I'm going to pay for it, all this madness in your head, and then doing it, and then the guilt and shame of doing it, of letting yourself down, letting your family down, feeling inadequate, feeling less than, all them things. Today, to be able to be different, you know what I mean, to be able to have God in my life and to be function, to be able to go out to work. I have my son working with me today, you know. I was struggling with a couple of things, you know. And I remember doing a 33-day consecration to St. Joseph there last year.
I just started that yesterday.
No,
Yeah.
So, of course, my son was in transition year. Frankie's in transition year. And he was getting up to, he wasn't turning up. He was getting bored in school, you know. I'm getting emails and phone calls after school. And I said, Frankie, listen, I don't care about school. I says, honestly, son, school can't teach you already don't know. But you ain't leaving until you get a job. And it's no simple little job, it has to be a good job. So he was like, right. So I'm in the middle of a 33-day consecration to St. Joseph, right? And next of all,
the spiritual father.
Sitting in the van one day, and he turns around and he says, Dad, I wouldn't mind getting an apprenticeship. And I looked, I says, doing what? And he says, carpentry. And I just looked up and said,
Jesus and Joseph.
Jesus and Joseph and carpenters.
I says, okay, son, we'll go for that then, you know what I mean? So I took him on for a little while, and it's easy like it, and he's still with me, you know. And so I always say to him, I says, you know, St. Joseph and Jesus was father and son, carpenters, thank you. He says, whatever chance I have of turning into St. Joseph, I says, you're never going to make Jesus. Don't ever let that get you down, you know. But, you know, that's a gift that I have today now. To have my son walk with me. I can teach him this gift, you know. And St. Joseph is big, and at the end of my rosaries, I go through certain saints I do, you know. St. Joseph is always there. He's on his own with Our Lady and with Jesus and with God and the Holy Spirit. You know, some of them are mixed together, like St. Carlo Acutis, St. Anthony, St. Charbel. All these ones are mixed together, St. Vincent Pilate, you know. But St. Joseph is always on his own with Our Lady and with Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit. That's I give them my own little dedication, you know. But it's powerful, you know. I said, when God comes into your life, wow.
Do you know what I'd like to just ask actually about is, like, even when God comes into your life and kind of takes over, but also do you still go through the moments where sometimes it's like not doubt, but more that you're not getting that feeling, or things are getting rough? Like for instance, this morning, I'd be curious to know your kind of spiritual routine, Darragh, you know, for people at home, just for myself as well, though. You know, this morning I woke up and I just had nightmares all night. Nightmares all night. Worst sleep ever. And I woke up bad this morning now, I just woke up and just one day morning, and I went, and the devil straight away in my head, don't do your prayers, you'll be doing them later on. And I went, nah. Got down on my knees, surrendered, gave thanks, God the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. I did the litany of humility, because that reminds me to just don't fear anything. It's all in God's hand. I did Michael the Archangel, and then I did the Rosary. And I can tell you, when I got up, I was a different man. You know what I mean? And but I suppose my point is that I didn't feel it, but I still had to do that. You know, the discipline of that daily routine.
We had that conversation as well. You know, on your good days you have to do it, and on your bad days you have to do it. I think people expect, like this, as I call it, a big da-da-da, you know, like a big moment, everything's going to be solved and everything's all good. It's not like that. It's still, we have our troubles, but we turn to prayer, and it takes a bit of the burden away and makes things easier in that moment. But it doesn't mean that we don't have those struggles, or that a day isn't tough. I had a really rubbish week this week, but still powered on, you know. People think when you find faith, that's it. They're waiting on the light bulb moment, you know. And that's what people keep turning this into, a feeling. And when they're not getting the feeling, they're like, oh, I can't be annoyed with that. I'm not. It's not about a feeling. It's not about a feeling. It's a deal. You have to do this every day, every single day of your life. And then a feeling comes from that, because you have this love and warmth that you've never had before.
It is, and it's like it's discipline in doing it, you know. It says on the days when you don't feel like doing it, you know. There was plenty of days there now when especially when I was starting the rosary, I'm going like, do I really have to do a rosary tonight, you know? But I made a consecration. I you know, I made I says to God, I says, right, God, I says, I tell you what, I made a covenant. I says, I'm going to pray a rosary every day. And now, even like there, you know, I'm doing the Life in the Spirit seminar now, you know, and I'm leading the rosary on the altar, and I'm leading the rosary. And then I come back after that on a Monday night, and I'm thinking, I don't have to do my rosary now. I've already done one today. And I'm like, you're going to walk that dog, you're doing your rosary. That was with other people. You have to do your own one now, you know. So the discipline in that, and like you said, Danielle, it's just, you know, not everything is cured, you know what I mean? I still sin, I still get up to do it, I still take my own will back, I still have to live life on life's terms, you know. But I have a lot more strength now. I know that no matter what I face, I'm not facing it alone, because I have God on my side. I never had God on my side before, and I feared everything. I don't fear a whole lot. Last night, John, I was getting worried, you know. I was a bit nervous coming on here and that, you know, and the head started to go, you know, and I was talking to my wife at the table, you know, and I'm going, right, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was doing Life in the Spirit seminar, and I just opened up the book, right? And on the page that we were on, right, Father Brendan was to speak there last week, and it was receiving God's gifts, you know. And the first page that I opened, right, and I looked, and it's like, do not be afraid, do not this, just ask God to come in, and He will do everything for you. And I was like, and I read it out, and I was sitting there, and there's only a little booklet, you know, and I read it out, and I was going, wow. You know, and it's like you with the Martyr's book. It's like these little things. It's
God
like
incidences,
I'm sitting there and I'm going to pick up my phone, right? Because I'm getting nervous, so I want to distract, you know. And I'm going to pick up my phone, and I'm like, no. And I seen the little booklet. I was going to go for the Bible or the booklet, you know. And I seen the little booklet because the Bible I can get a little bit lost, you know. I'm up in scripture, but I read up a little bit, but I can get a little bit carried away and lost with the madness of it, you know. Not the madness, but out the big words and trying to break it down and trying to get the meaning of it and simple like that, you know. So I find listening to the Gospels a lot easier. But I seen this the Life in the Seminars book and something drawed me to it. And I opened it up and here you go. God is telling me, don't be worrying.
Yeah.
Just put your trust in me and I will make it all right, you know.
That's
and I was
it.
like, there you go.
He always finds a way to communicate it, either through a person or making you have an impulse to do something like that.
Yeah. The intuition, you know, we pray in page 86, 87, 88 in the book that I study in my program, the 12-step program, you know. It's about getting up in the morning and turning your will and your life over to God, right? It's about, you know, on awakening, we go to God, right? So it's like getting up in the morning and we do certain things, you know, divorce me from selfish, self-seeking, dishonest motives, because that way I'm more in tune with God, you know. And then at the end of every night then, as you go through a little thing, it's like, right, was I selfish, dishonest? Do I owe an apology to someone? You know, it's like a mini little confession that's just tipped through every night.
Examining your own conscience.
So when I do my rosary at night, I'm walking the dog, I do my rosary, then I do my little step 11, my little daily review. So it kind of keeps me having resentful, fearful, you know what I mean, all these things. And I go through that and it's like, yeah, do you know what? I need to get confession, you know, I need to do this. It's like I can do this on a daily basis, but then I need to get confession. You know, and I was actually jealous because I was up leading the rosary on Monday night and I could see the red light on the confession box in the church. And I'm looking and I'm going, it's been a couple of weeks now since I got confession and I can feel it and I'm going, you know, I like to go every 4 weeks to at least every 6 weeks. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, you know, this is getting too much here now. And I'm looking at the red light and I'm looking at the queue of people and going, I'm getting jealous of them, you know, they're going into confession.
What a change in your life.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I tell you, John, I've like the things that God has done into my life, you know, he's like, I get asked to go to Rome for the Jubilee of Hope. It's the Jubilee of Hope, you know, and all through my addiction, I never gave up hope. I always clung to the hope. Like I could buy drugs and I could have bought in quantities, right? That would have been a lot cheaper and all, but I didn't. I used to buy simplified everyday bags, right? Because I always said to myself, tomorrow this is my last day. I'd wake up the next morning and I go, no, tomorrow. But I always never give up the hope that someday I was going to get it, you know? And I was asked to go to Rome. I was invited to go to Rome, and the Jubilee of Hope was this year. And I was asked to go with the youths, you know. And it's not for my youthful appearance. It was to give testimony to the young people over there. And it was an amazing experience, you know. The Palatines sent me to Rome, right? And I was like, you know, with 79 other Palatines from all over the world, right? And we were together and we had an amazing experience going through Rome. We seen the opening mass, the Pope drove. I'm literally a foot away from Pope Leo, you know, and he come by and blessing us all. And we got to see the 4 major basilicas, to go in all the holy doors. And we got to do, obviously, the Palatines of St. Vincent Pallotti. We got to see his house, all about him, where he did, the things he did, you know. And he always says, Vincent Pallotti was saying that, you know, we can all be apostles for Jesus, you know. In the simplest way, you don't have to be so holy, you don't have to be a saint, you don't have to be a priest. The simplest little things by going out and doing something for God. And that's like doing it with love, you know what I mean? Going out and doing it. And I was like, you know, and that's what I did. And we got to learn that over there. And I learned it beforehand, but I got to see it over there first time. I got to sleep out with 1.2 million people in Torre Vergata while the Pope did a mass, and we stayed an overnight vigil. We stayed in this, like the Phoenix Park, say, and 1.2 million young people there praising and singing Jesus and the Lord and all.
Amazing.
What an honour for you, but how beautiful as well, because when you were in Rome, you were withdrawn from drugs the last time when you were getting married.
Yeah.
And now here you are speaking to the youth for the Jubilee.
Do you want a better one, John?
That's unbelievable, but that's gone.
Do you want a better one? 2 nights before, I was asked to go over, before the pilgrimage started on a Monday morning. And they said to me, will you come over on the Saturday and stay 2 nights to get yourself ready, because you don't want to be coming over straight into the pilgrimage, you know, and you can stay 2 nights after the pilgrimage. And I was like, right. And I says to Father John, where am I staying? Do you know where I stayed? In the San Silvestro. The church that I got married in. I slept in the church. There's little apartments up over it. You know,
God
like
is good.
21 years later, I get to Rome on the Saturday and we goes to bed and I wakes up at 4:30 in the morning. Something about 4 o'clock, 4:30, waking me up in the morning. But I'm in Rome and I wakes up, you know, with the heat and everything like that. And I look out one window and I see out into the plaza, out into the street, you know, and I look out the another window here and I can see the little courtyard into the church and the gate is open in the church. And I thought to myself, do you know what? Grab the rosary beads, down I goes, and then I sitting in the church. Now it's dark, it's completely dark. There's only the two little the lights that, you know, to say that Jesus is in the tabernacle, you know, the two little red lights, you know. That's all that's on in this church. So I'm sitting there and I'm saying the rosary. You know, I learned the rosary in Irish. I learned the Our Father, Hail Mary and the Glory Be in Irish before I went to Rome, you know. Just to get into my native tongue, because it brings me close to all our forefathers and stuff like that, you know. So I'm in there and I'm saying the rosary, you know, and I'm finished. And I'm sitting there and I'm just contemplating life. And I'm looking at when 21 years previous, when the wedding was going on, and I can see the different things and I can see me dad here. And I got very, you know, I got very emotional, you know, because of where I was then, but where I am now. But it's very love and gratitude. I just get love and gratitude, you know. One of the things every night before I go to bed, I get on my knees. And I do the rosary when I'm walking the dog, but when I get on my knees, I don't pray. I give love and thanks and gratitude to Jesus for getting me through that day, for what he's given me in my life and helping me do what I do, you know. But I got that day, and I'm thinking to myself, like, here's a turnaround, John. You know, it's like,
amazing.
I couldn't write it stuff, you know. It's been powerful. It's been an amazing journey. And like, I bring people through a 12-step program. I go on pilgrimages. Like, I did the pilgrimage up to Crowpatrick with the local parish, bringing young people. We brought a lot of young people with us. It was amazing. We did a Father John. 69 of us went up on the warmest day of the year. We climbed Crowpatrick this year. But it was a beautiful experience, you know, to bring young people, getting young people to come back into the church. Me and Damien, we go to Lochderg. We take lads off to Lochderg every year. And I always say, a little sadistic way, I actually love Lochderg. I love the ritual of the fast. I do the full fast. I do 3-day fasting now. I don't eat for 3 days, just water. And I go up to the mountains on the second day. And how close you get to God when you do that is really powerful.
We have to do it again.
Oh, yeah. I love it. And then Lochderg is like a 3-day fast. And barefooted, you walked around.
We've been.
You're saying that many Our Fathers and Hail Marys, you get a hybrid in there. There's a one becomes the same prayer.
You don't know what you're saying. Turns into tongues almost.
Yeah. It's like we're speaking tongues, isn't it?
Come here, Darragh, you know, I just, you've zoned in on it a bit, but the sacraments, just because they bring it back to, we had a conversation before about this, about born agains, you know, and what I see from the born again community in Dublin, it's a lot of Dublin working class people going born again. That's what I see a lot of, you know. Nothing against them if they're going to Christ, great, you know, but a lot of them would have ignorance towards Catholicism and the church, and also and would have mad conspiracies. That's one aspect, but then also would just have ignorance towards the sacraments and the importance of sacraments. And again, even I would see a lot of like people, working class people who are alcoholics and addicts, going to it again, the born again thing, and it goes back to what me and Danielle were talking about, the feeling, and they're looking for a feeling, and you know, oftentimes they get to go to these churches and there's, you know, a lot of singing and guitars and they're getting a feeling. But I mean, there's almost like that's what they go to expect, this feeling about them. I mean, and they'll sort of talk about, you know, Mass is about going to worship our Lord. It's not about feeling. Now, with the discipline of the prayer and that routine and that spiritual routine, you will feel it and you will get that reward from, but it comes from worshipping our Lord first. So I think you'd be a good person just to speak on that, about the sacraments and that, you know, versus that.
But it's mad because, you know, I was in town on Saturday just gone, John, for the March for Jesus, you know, and I went in for Jesus because he saved me life, you know. But like that, it's a very born again. There's a lot of born again. You know, there's all sorts of faith in it, but more Christians. But a lot of them are born again. And as you said, it's the prayers. And I know in recovery as well. I know a lot of people, and like that, they're going because it's praise and worship. You know, and I didn't understand Mass. I didn't understand what Mass was about, even when I was clean and sober. And I remember Father Adrian one Friday night leaving his house. You know, my family think I'm mad now. All my nieces and nephews and all. I'm like holy Darragh now coming in. You know, it's great. But I've 3 little girls. My sister's 3 little girls. You know, and they'd come over to me and they'd be always asking about Jesus, and I'd be always talking about God and stuff like this. You know, so I'm Father Adrian. I'm telling him one night, and he gives me a little book, and it's like Children's Guide to the Mass. And I brings this book home on a Friday night, and I'm sitting there, and I get home, and he opens it up, and I'm looking at this Mass, and I'm going, oh, we confess our sins at the start. We confess at the start, then we hear the word of God, then the gifts get brought to the altar, and it's why Mass goes the way it goes. And I was blown away by this, and I'm going, this is why everything happens. And then, you know, all this, and I was going, wow. And I was blown away by it. I didn't give the book to the kids. I kept it, you know, because I was like, no, they're too young for that right now, you know. But I was like, yeah. But like, I didn't understand all this, John. And I was like, now, when I go to Mass, it's not what can I get out of Mass, it's what can I bring to Mass. Yes. I go in now to adoration. It's one of the sacraments now, adoration. I sit with God, and I try every Friday, I try get home to my local parish, and I try from 3 to 5, and I'll try get in there for at least an hour if I can, right? Because out of the 40 odd hours or the 50, whatever the many hours is in a week, right? At least if I can give one of them to God and just sit there with him. But it's amazing, you know, when I go into that church, I get that little shiver. Like when the Lord touched me that day, I get that little shiver that's like, I have your back. You know, it's like I'm here. It's like he's putting his arm around me. And I get it sometimes when I receive the Eucharist after Mass. I come back down to my chair, and I get down on my knees, and I have a set little thing. I give thanks, love and gratitude, and I ask him to be a better husband, better father. I go through a few things. Sometimes I get that little shiver off him as well. And it's like, I know, it's like, you know, now that me and you have become one, Jesus, you know, I'm at the receiving your body, please help me do your will, you know. And I get that little shiver. So that's an amazing thing to get that. You're not going to get that in any other faith. We are Catholics. We have this gift of receiving Jesus every time we go to Mass, 2 or 3 times a day. I remember saying to a priest in Rome, is there a limit on how many times you can actually get communion, you know? Because I was only getting something that morning. I had 2 Masses that morning, and we were at another one that day, and I was going, is there a limit? He goes, no. You know what I mean? I was like, great.
I wondered that as well. I was in Knock one time, and I did it twice a Monday. I'm like, I wonder, it is daily bread, but is it twice daily? Yeah.
But like, you know, and that's it. And I mean, other faiths don't have that.
It's a source of strength.
It really is.
It is.
Yeah, it really is. And then you talked about the sacrament of reconciliation. Wow, you know, what a thing to be able to sit there and to share with a priest, you know, to be humble enough to say what you're after doing, you know, and to share it. And I used to be very judgmental. I used to go, I'm not going to that priest, he knows me, I'll go here and I'll go there. But then I'm thinking, you know what I mean? It's not the priest I'm talking to, it's God. He's just going to give me absolution. Do you know what I mean? But it's God's through the priest, you know? Because we do it in our program, we can do our 4th step, but our 5th step is reading your 4th step out. And that's, you read it out to another human and to God. And when I'm doing that with people, I always light a candle. When I'm sponsoring people, I always light the candle. And I tell them at the start, the candle is God. That light is God. I says, I'm just going to sit here and he's going to walk through me. But when they're reading the 5th step out, I say, you're doing this because you have to get humble enough to read it out. Because you can say it in your head and you can say it to God. I says, but it's humble enough to read it out to another person, to say it to someone else. You know?
Amen.
That's where the power of it is.
And again, that's where the other denominations, they don't have that. No. They get to say, I can have a chat with you, God. Yeah. They don't humble themselves in front of another man.
Because all they say is it's God and Jesus we need to speak to. It isn't the man who is flawed. But all humans are flawed, not just a priest. All of us, me included, every single one of them, we're all flawed, and we're not confessing to a priest, as you said, it's to Jesus. And that's the most important thing. And it works. It has worked for 2,000 years. Look at us. Who could be sitting here today like this without God in their lives? Because you tried. We tried. Without God, we're nothing.
It's nothing.
Do you know, Darragh, as well, again, the power of surrender is about, see, that surrender. I had a similar thing, and I don't know an episode on it where I surrendered. But there's something to that where it's like, if you want to make this happen and turn this around, you know, to the people at home, get down and surrender. Just surrender. But you have to do it. You have to, I suppose you have to be lost to surrender. You know?
I said it, John. I do always say it. It's if you surrender something to God, it's the only time in your life that you surrender that you will actually come out victorious.
Yeah.
Because you surrender to God, you will actually come out. You see lads in the war and they surrender in the war, they get thrown into prison or war camps and they go through the everything, the craziness, right? If you surrender to God, you will actually come out victorious because he will take that away from you and he will give you whatever it is, you know what I mean?
I'm going to use that.
Amen.
That is brilliant.
Yeah,
That is brilliant.
I heard that, you know, it was actually a woman, through hearing my testimony, she gave me a lovely little book, and it was a priest who wrote the book, and it was like the 12 steps mixed in with the Bible, you know. And I said to you, it's a brilliant book. Richard Brauer, I think it is, Father Richard Brauer, right? But it's the 12 steps mixed in with the Bible, and they link certain things, and he's talking about it, and it was like, it's the only time you surrender that you'll come out victorious. And I was like, it really, really, truly is, you know, it really is. And I said, it's so powerful, you know, so powerful. You know, everything about it, you know.
Well, that was powerful. Just before we go, they always say, you know, the eyes are the window to the soul, and just looking in your eyes today, I don't know what, I can see the goodness of your soul, by the way. I just wanted to highlight it because you've, I don't know, hit something in me several times there. So from me, I want to thank you for coming here and sharing your story with us and being so open and saying yes to God.
Thank you so
Darragh,
much.
the second I saw you in the coffee shop, I said straight away, I love him. I just got it from you. I just got that feeling from you, and your eyes. I see the window, the eyes are the windows to the soul, as actors always say as well. Yeah. And I could just see that real goodness in you, and I can see God is in your heart. This was so powerful, and you got me a few times, man. I'm going again because actually I'm full of joy right now. Even though my eyes are, I'm full of joy because that is so powerful. You've said so much practical advice, well, for people, but also there's so much people, so people know that there's no road that is too far gone. There's always hope. You can always come back, and the key is God, and the key is surrendering. And those sacraments, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So powerful. And you know, John, I'll finish, and as I always say, I do try read bits of scripture and stuff like that, but the one that stands out to me alone, the most, it's one of my favourite ones, is John 8, verse 12. And it says, I am the light of the world. The one who follows me will never have to be in darkness. Rather, he will have the light of life. And when I went through 30 years of addiction, I was in darkness. I was in complete darkness. I follow the Lord now, and my life is full of light. It's an amazing life. It's full of life. It still has ups and downs, but I know with God in my life, it's so powerful. And it's just say to people out there, you know, never give up hope, but start praying, and pray like you really mean it from the heart. Like that day I stood in front of the Lord, I really gave a heartfelt, it wasn't just lip service. I really, really asked God to change my life, and he did. You know, I let him in there, and he did.
Amen, brother.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and God bless you, man.
Thank you. God bless. Take care.